All right, this week we're going to be talking about survival analysis. Your learning objective for this week is to examine survival analysis and Cox regression analysis. Just like the other weeks, we have some videos for you all to watch on YouTube that do a pretty good job of explaining the concepts you need to understand to be able to interpret survival analysis in the literature. The last one here, Ayumi's Biostats Lesson 27 on Cox proportional hazard regression concept. It's a little bit longer. It does get a little bit into the weeds on how you actually do the analysis in a SPSS statistical software. But for the most part, she does a really good job of explaining the concepts. It may be a little bit hard to understand with her understand her because she's kind of soft-spoken, but I think it does provide some important information that will help you better understand the Cox regression analysis concepts. When she starts getting into the nuts and bolts of actually how you do it in SPSS, you guys can fast forward to those sections there. So what is survival analysis? Survival analysis are statistical methods to help us analyze data when the event variable is the time until the occurrence of an event of interest. Now, survival is a little bit of a misnomer because we're not always interested in time to say when somebody dies or how long they survive. Now, this type of analysis is most commonly used in cancer research, where they're maybe looking at time to death from cancer or, say, disease-free survival time. But you can really model at looking at the outcome of being the time to any event of interest. In the anesthesia literature, the reason we want you to understand these concepts is because you're seeing it more and more in the anesthesia literature. And we even had it, we did a study a number of years ago where we did a survival analysis as part of our student projects, and we published that in the AANA journal. So I think it is important that you all understand these concepts and how to interpret the results. You can use it to model time to return of motor function after a labor epidural, or time to 2-dermatome regression after spinal anesthesia, or even the length of labor. You can even see in this particular article in Anesthesiology back in 2009 that they were using survival analysis to model the time to vaginal delivery in patients who got an epidural either in early latent phase or an active phase. And we'll talk about this, how you interpret that a little bit later. What is the time to event that you're modeling? Well, it can be minutes, it can be days, weeks, months, or even years. So the key is the subjects are followed over a specified period of time. And the focus is on the time at which the event occurs. That's the outcome variable or the dependent variable. Survival, so that's survival time, is the time to the event. Maybe it's time to complete motor block recovery. Now we can use statistical tests to actually compare the dependent variable on time to an event, and that statistical test is a log rank test. It's a non-parametric test. You also can use regression analysis techniques, and that specifically is Cox proportional regression analysis, or easier to say is just Cox regression analysis, where it's essentially just like logistic regression. In this circumstance, is we're modeling time to event as opposed to a dichotomous variable. Nice thing is you can control or adjust for a numerous confounding variables, say like age, gender, comorbidity index. And you can also use it to help compare differences between groups while controlling for those confounding variables. Why not use linear regression to model survival time as a function of a set of predictor variables? Well, the problem is survival times are usually skewed. And so many times they're going to require transformation to make them look like a normal distribution so they can be used in a regression model. And the problem is linear regression or multiple regression cannot effectively handle what we call censoring of observations. Essentially, this is would be in regression, linear regression, that'd be considered missing data. Now, censoring is what happens when you're modeling time to event. Is sometimes not everybody experiences that event. They may leave the study early. They're lost to follow-up. Or they're just not followed long enough. The study ends before they actually have the event. Maybe it's a cancer study and they survived for 20 years is the duration of the study and they didn't die, and then the week later they died of a heart attack. Or maybe during the course of the study they died in a motor vehicle accident. But that wasn't considered the event, and so they could be censored. And censoring just simply means you don't know or you can't use their survival beyond a certain point. It's also referred to as right censoring. And the three different types of right censoring is what I've already mentioned. One is the patient has not yet experienced the relevant event before the close of the study. The patient has lost a follow-up, or the patient experiences a different event that makes further follow-up impossible. Probably censored survival times underestimate the true time to the event. Now, if we look at the figure over here on the left, here we have a calendar time, and then we have time from diagnosis. And what they've done is they've converted. They're converting the calendar time in this particular. It's an ovarian cancer study to survival analysis format. So R's represent relapse, D represents death from ovarian cancer, little o, death from another cause. A is they attended a last clinic visit alive, L was lost to follow-up, X was death, and then you got a square was censored. So we can see here, we have the different patients here, and then we have the time, like the year frame. So this subject here entered in, say, the mid-1990s. They had a relapse, and then they died, say, in 93. This patient survived, entered in at maybe 1991. They survived about 1996 before they died. They had a relapse sometime in 94, 95. This patient probably entered the study in 91. They had a quick relapse, and they died. And so on, you can see that. Here we have a patient who survived, and then they died from another cause before the end of the study, which would be right here. Here, this patient was still alive at the end of the study. And so this one and this patient was lost to follow-up. Now we convert this to a survival analysis format. Here you can see X is where they had the events of interest. And then the squares are where they were censored. And so you have to code the data appropriately so that you can crunch the numbers in the statistical software. There's a couple different types of what they call right censoring. You don't need to memorize these. I just show them to you because you're going to read them in the readings this week. A type 1 is a completely random dropout and or a fixed time of end of the study and the event hasn't occurred. Type 2, study ends when a fixed number of events amongst the subjects has occurred. The key is that you want the censoring to be random and really non-informative, meaning it shouldn't really make that much of a difference, to avoid bias in the survival analysis. The good thing is the statistical tests are pretty robust with censored data, and they can handle